Hello, and welcome to another session of Excel Programming for Clinicians with me, Dlorton Callum. In this session, I will introduce you to some of the built-in VBA functions that help us work with and manipulate text. You'll see that these built-in functions are no different to the user-defined functions we built together a couple of videos ago, except someone on the Excel VBA team has done all the hard work for you. Now, an understanding of how to use these functions in conjunction with everything else we have covered so far will give you all of the tools you need to work with clinical data. So we will look specifically at the basic string concatenation. We will then look at the length, left, mid, and right functions used individually and together. Next, we'll look at the in-string function, which lets us know whether one item of text is included in another item of text. We will then look at how to trim space from our text, and we'll look at how to replace one item of text with another. Finally, we'll look at how to manipulate case in our text. Okay, let's start by looking at some basic string concatenation. So let's say we ask the patient for their forename and surname, and we want to present this back to the user as the full name. Let's declare a variable for the surname and another one for the forename. Now let's use an input box to get the user's surname and another input box to get the user's forename. And let's use a message box to present that back to the user. Now the way to join these together, to concatenate these together, is to use the ampersand symbol. So the ampersand symbol is the key concatenation symbol, and that will join together our surname and our forename and present it in a message box. Let's run the code and see what that looks like. So we get asked for our surname and our forename. And that's presented back to us in a message box. Okay, you can also concatenate using the plus symbol. If I comment this out and change this to the plus, now this will work, as you can see. It works the same as the ampersand, but there are circumstances in which it sometimes fails. The ampersand, on the other hand, will work all of the time. So my recommendation is to use the ampersand instead of the plus symbol. Now, the other thing you notice from the way we've concatenated this together is that the surname and the forename are joined together with no space or separator between them. Let's improve on our concatenation. We use a message box. We want to concatenate the surname, and this time, instead of just adding it straight to the forename, we'll want to add a comma and a space. And then we concatenate the forename. So now I'm concatenating three things: the surname, a comma, and a space. And remember, any text needs to be included in quotation marks. And then the third item is the forename. So let's run that code and see what that looks like. And this time, our name is presented in a nicely formatted way. Okay, let's demonstrate concatenating things that are not necessarily text. So you can concatenate together a string and a number using the ampersand symbol. Let's run that and see what that looks like. and that's presented and nicely formatted as we expected. However, if I was to change this and put a plus symbol there, let's run that and see what that gives us. As you can see, Excel crashes with a type mismatch error. So with a plus symbol there, Excel thinks you're trying to do an addition. It doesn't realize you're trying to do a concatenation. So that's why I recommend always using the ampersand instead of the plus symbol, because the plus symbol can sometimes fail. Let's comment this out. And let's try concatenating a date. So if I was to change this to a date, remember dates have to be included in hashtags. I can say, and I'm using the ampersand symbol here. Let's run that. And as you can see, the concatenation works in that instance. And just for completeness, let's try that with a plus symbol. And again, you get a type mismatch error. Now, sometimes you can get text that's very long that you want to concatenate. Let's demonstrate that. Got some pre-written text here, which I'll paste in. So, say we had text like this and we wanted to present it to the user in a message box. Let's declare a variable for long text. What you can do, if I copy that first sentence, you can make long text equal to, and remember to use your quotation marks. That gets you the first sentence. The way you get the second sentence is to say long text equals to whatever long text currently is, ampersand, and then you add in the second sentence. And finally, that should say N. And finally, the third sentence, long text equals to whatever long text currently is. Remember, it's now 2 sentences, and we want to add our third sentence. I can copy that, paste that there. And now I can say message box, and I can display my long text. Let's comment out some of this other code. And let's run this and see what it looks like. And as you can see, we now have our long text presented as a single sentence. So the key is to concatenate long pieces of text together. The first time you just put the single sentence. The second time you say your variable equals to whatever your variable currently is, ampersand, and then the next sentence. And you keep doing that till you get to the last sentence. Next, let's take a look at the length function. The length function tells you how many characters there are in your text. So let's declare a variable for patient name. And let's ask the user for their name. So having got the patient name, let's now calculate the length of that name and present it to the user in a message box. So message box, I use a length function, and then in brackets, you put whatever the piece of text is that you want to calculate the length of. And the message box will display the length of that piece of text. Let's demonstrate that. So type in a name, click on OK, and that is 16 characters long. So ways in which you can use that. Let's use another message box and present back to the user. So hello, and I'll leave a space and I'll ampersand the patient name, and I'll ampersand and put a full stop after the patient name, and I'll say your name is, and I'll end that sentence there, put another ampersand, and then I'll use the length function, patient name, and then I'll use another ampersand, leave a space and say characters long. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. We're asking the patient for their name using our input box. We get the name and then we use a message box. And here we're concatenating the word hello with a space after it and the patient name. We're then concatenating that to another piece of text, a full stop, and then we're saying your name is, and then we stop that sentence there. And then we use our length function to calculate the length of the patient name. We then concatenate that onto another piece of text that says characters long. So your name is 16, or whatever the length is, characters long. So let's run that and see what that looks like. And we get as we expected. Hello, Dlotson Callon, your name is 16 characters long. Okay, so what are some of the other useful ways in which we can use the length function? Let's comment out this code. Let's declare a new variable for telephone number. And we'll declare that as a string. And we'll use an input box again to get the patient's telephone number. Okay, so we use an input box and we get the telephone number. And now we want to check the telephone number is correct before we use it. So in the UK, a phone number should be 11 characters long. So we can say something like if, and then we say length of telephone number. If length of telephone number is not equal to 11, then we can display one message. Else, we can display another message and we can end if. Okay, so we're checking the telephone number length. And if it's not 11, then we can display a message. Sorry, incorrect format. And we can display that number back to the user. And please enter a correct number. Okay, so let's have a look at this. We're saying sorry, and we're telling them the reason why, incorrect format. In fact, let's say incorrect length. Okay, and then we're using our ampersand to concatenate the phone number so we can display it back to the user. Let's put a full stop at the end of that. And then we're concatenating a requirement for them to enter a correct phone number. If they do present a correct phone number, thank you. We'll call you on, and you can concatenate the phone number. We'll call you on this number. Invite you to clinic. Okay, so if they enter the correct phone number, we're saying thank you. We will call you on, and then we concatenate the phone number. And notice how I'm leaving a space at the end of this sentence before I then close off with a quotation mark and use my ampersand to add a telephone number. Then I use an ampersand again to start another concatenation. And then I concatenate on the text to invite you to clinic, and I make sure I leave a space at the beginning of that sentence because the phone number will then join on with the space and the rest of the sentence. Let's run that code and see what it looks like. So if I enter an incorrect number, it says, sorry, incorrect length. And then my phone number is displayed back to me so I can see what the error was. Please enter a correct number. Let's run that again. Thank you. We will call you on that number to invite you to clinic. So the key thing here is to notice how we did the concatenation. Every piece of text that we are typing in is enclosed within quotation marks, and then we can use our ampersand to concatenate, and then we put the variable that's holding the data that we want to concatenate to the rest of the sentence. And we use spaces where appropriate so that our text is nicely formatted. Next, let's look at the left function. Let's assume you've imported some text. And the text is not nicely formatted, everything is squashed together, but there are specific characters used to separate the text, and you want to split the text up. Let's demonstrate. Say, for instance, the imported text has a hospital number separated by a dash from the surname, separated by a dash from the forename. And you want to split out just the hospital number. So let's declare a variable to hold the hospital number. So to get the hospital number from that imported text, we use an Excel function called left. And left expects you to pass in the text that you want to extract data from. So in our case, it's imported text. And then it says, how many characters do you want to extract? In our case, it's 7 characters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we want to take the first 7 characters and put them into the hospital number field. So let's now display that in a message box. So I've passed my message into the message box. In this case, whatever text is held in hospital number. I'm using the VB OK only buttons for the message box, and I've given my message box a title of left function. Let's run that and see what we get. And that extracts just the hospital number as we expected. So the important parts of the left function are the text you want to extract the data from and the number of characters you want to extract. If you were to use a number that was way larger than the length of your imported text, let's see what happens. It will extract everything in your text because 50 in this instance is longer than the length of the whole text. Next, let's look at the mid function. The mid function, as its name implies, gets the text from the middle of a string. So let's use our same variables as before. But in this instance, we want to extract the surname. So our surname is somewhere in the middle. So it starts at position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters long. So to extract the surname, we use the mid function. The mid function, like the left function, wants to know what the text is that you want to extract the string from. So in our case, it's imported text. It asks you where you want to start, and we want to start at position 9. And then what length of string do we want to extract? And in our case, we want to extract 6 characters. So let's present that in a message box. Okay, let's run that code and see what we get. So we extract just the surname. Let's copy that code, comment it out, and see what happens if we start from the wrong position. So if we start from a position that's way outside our existing imported text, let's run that code and see what we get. As you see, we get a blank string. So we have to be careful to correctly specify where we want to start and what the length of character is that we want to extract. Next, let's look at the write function. Let's copy our variables from before, but this time we want to extract the forename. The way to extract the forename is to use the Excel function write. Write, like left, wants to know where you want to extract the text from. So in our case, it's the imported text. And then it says how many characters do we want to extract. We want to extract 9 characters. So we want to start at the right, and we want to take 9 characters. Let's display that in the message box. Okay, let's run that code and see what we get. And as expected, it extracts the forename only. Next, let's take a look at inString. InString is really useful for finding the position of one string inside another. So let's copy our imported text variable and our imported text. Now say we wanted to know the position of the dash in that string. So let's declare a variable for position of dash. Declare that as an integer. The way we get the position of dash is to use the inString function. The inString function asks you where you want to start. So in our case, we want to start at position 1 in our string. It then asks you what's the source string that you want to search through. So in our case, it's the imported text string. And then it asks you what string you want to look for. In our case, it's the dash. We close the bracket there. So position of dash is equal to, we're asking Excel to use the inString function starting at position 1 in our imported text, so starting from the W, and search through this text looking for a dash and return the position of that dash. So we're expecting it to be at position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's see if that's right. Dash is in position. Now concatenate on position of dash. Okay, so I'm concatenating a string here, dash is in position, and I'm putting on my variable dash. Let's run that and see what we get. So as expected, dash is in position 8. Let's try and work out the position of the comma. Let's declare a variable. Position of comma. and it will be very similar to position of dash. Except instead of a dash, we're looking for a comma. Let's use our message box to display that back to the user. Comma is in position of comma. Okay, let's run that code and see what we get. So the dash is in position 8 and comma is in position 15. So before, when we tried to use the mid function to get surname, we had to know the length of the surname that we wanted to extract, and we had to know exactly which position we wanted to start in. But now that we can calculate those using position of dash and position of comma, let's see how we rewrite the surname function to extract that so that it works for any surname and any forename that we might not know beforehand. So I'll declare a variable for surname. And this time I'll say surname equals to, still using my mid function, still using imported text. But this time, instead of hard coding my start position, I want to start from the position of the dash. And instead of hard coding the length, if I calculate the position of the comma minus position of dash, so let's take a look at what we're doing here. We've got the surname, we're using the mid function, we're passing in the imported string, and now we're saying start at the position of the dash, and in terms of which length to take, you've calculated the position of the comma and you've calculated the position of the dash. If you subtract that position from that position, that should give us the surname. So let's use a message box to display the surname. Okay, let's run that code and see what the surname is. So dash is at position 8, comma is at position 15. Surname, we're getting the surname, but we still have the dash in the surname. So we're nearly there, but not quite. And this is a very common situation you come across in programming. It's very famous. It's called the off by one error, where your calculation can easily be off by one, either too large by one or too small by one. In this case, we have started at a position that is too low by one. So let's rewrite this. So instead of starting at the dash, we'll start at the dash plus 1. So we'll start in the exact surname. Let's run this again. So dash is at position 8. We will now start at position 9. Comma is at position 15. We run it again, but this time we're off by 1 on the other side. We've included the comma. So let's correct that. So to correct that, not only do we need to add 1 to the position of the dash so that we're starting on the first character, we need to subtract 1 from the position of the comma so that we're ending on the last letter of the surname. So let's subtract 1 from here. Let's run that again. Dash is at position 8, comma is at position 15, and now we're extracting just the surname. So here we've seen concatenation, we've seen the use of the mid function together with the in-string function to derive the surname, and we've also learned about the famous off by one error in computer programming. Okay, so what happens if you try to look for text that doesn't exist in the string you're searching? Let's demonstrate that by searching for a full stop. So let's declare a variable as an integer to hold the position of our full stop. And let's copy of our previous code and reuse it. So now we want to look for position of full stop. So now we're using our inString function, starting at position 1, searching through the imported text for a full stop. We put that into a variable, and then we display that in a message box. Let's run that code and see what that looks like. Position of dash is 8. Position of comma is 15. Position of full stop is 0. So Excel returns a 0 if it cannot find the text that you're looking for. It doesn't mean the full stop is at position 0. It means that the text hasn't been found. So it's really important that anytime you're using the inString function, you first check that the value returned from the inString function is not 0. So the way you would write this is you use an if statement. You say if position of full stop is not equal to 0, then you would display it. Else, you display a different message. Okay, so if the position of full stop is not equal to 0, then you will use the position of full stop. But if it is equal to 0, then you return a message saying full stop can't be found. Let's demonstrate. So position of dash is 8, position of comma is 15, and now, sorry, full stop not found in the text search. So how would we use that? Let's comment this code out. Let's say we wanted to find the forename. We can use the write function to find the forename, but we want to know how many characters to extract, and for that we need the position of the comma. So let's do this. Let's say if position of comma is not equal to 0, then we can use it, else we'll have to display another message. So if the position of comma is not 0, then we can extract the forename using the write function. Use our imported text, and then what's the length that we want to extract? Well, it's the length of the whole imported text. You think about it, it's the length of the whole imported text minus the position of the comma less 1, so that we start at a position 1 along. So let's put that in there. Let's say length of imported text minus position of comma minus 1. And we want to display that in a message box. So this is, we're using the length function and we're using the write function. And of course, if the comma is not found, we can display a different message. Before we run the code, we need to declare a variable for forename. Okay, let's run that code and see what it looks like. So dash is at position 8, comma is at position 15, and we've extracted the forename. Let's have a look at the left trim. Let's copy our imported text from before. We just want the imported text variable and our imported text. Now imagine you imported some text and it had some spaces in front and behind it. Let's print that text to Excel. We'll use our range object and set the value property. Let's also use a message box to display our imported text. So I'll say imported text is, and I'll concatenate on, and I'll use the length function to calculate the length of the imported text. And I'll finish the sentence by saying characters long. So I'm using the message box and I'm concatenating a text that says imported text is, and I'm calculating the length of that imported text, and then I'm concatenating the rest of my text which says characters long. Let's run that and see what we've got so far. So my text is inserted in the text box and I have a message box displaying my imported text is 35 characters long. Now let's declare another variable called left trimmed text. I'll declare that as string. The way we trim text from the left is to use the ltrim or left trim function and pass in the text that we want to trim. Let's use a range object to insert that text into Excel. I'll set the value property to my left trim text. I'll also use a message box to display the number of characters. So I'll say left trimmed text is. So I'm using a message box here to say left trim text is, and I'm using the length function to calculate the length of my left trim text, and I'm displaying that in the message box. Let's run this code and see what it looks like. So my imported text before trimming is 35 characters long. My left trim text is 30 characters long. And as you can see, pasted into Excel, without the trimming, I have space at the front of my text, but with the trimming, I've trimmed all the white spaces from the left-hand side of that text. Next, let's look at the right trim function. The right trim function works in the same way as the left trim function, except it trims white space from the right-hand side of our text. Let's copy the variables and text that we used before and change them as we need them. So now I'm going to do right trimming. Before I trim, I'm going to use a range object and set the value property to my imported text. And I'll copy my message box line from the previous code and paste it in there. So, same imported text, and I'm displaying that in the message box. Let's run the code and see what it looks like so far. So my imported text is pasted in and it is 35 characters long. Now let's set our right trim text as equal to, and this time we'll use the right trim function and we'll pass in our imported text. And we'll use a range object to display that imported text. So I'm using the right trim function, I'm passing in the imported text, and then I'm assigning that to the right trimmed text variable, and then I'm displaying that in Excel. At the same time, let's use a message box to display right trimmed text is, and we'll concatenate and we'll use a length function to calculate the right trim text. And we'll finish that sentence by saying characters long. So in our message box, we're displaying the text right trim text is, and then we're using our ampersand to concatenate on a length function that calculates the length of that right trimmed text, and then we finish our sentence off with characters long. Let's run that code and see what we get. So before trimming is 35 characters long, after trimming is 30 characters long, and as we can see, we've right trimmed our text. Next, let's take a look at the trim function. The trim function, as you can imagine, does the right trimming and left trimming at the same time. So let's copy our variables and imported text from before, and let's change the right trimmed variable to just trimmed text. Let's use a range object to display the imported text. And let's copy our message box line from before and use that to display the number of characters in our imported text. Now, the way to assign trim text is to use the trim function and pass in the imported text. Then we can assign that to Excel using a range object. Let's copy over our final message box line from the code before and change as we need it. So here I'm concatenating the text trim text is onto the length of the trim text calculated using a length function, and then I'm adding characters long at the end. Let's run this code and see what it looks like. So before trimming, it is 35 characters long, and after trimming, it's only 25 characters long. So the 5 spaces at the front and 5 spaces at the back have both been trimmed off. Next, let's take a look at the replace function. Okay, let's create the world's worst password generator. Let's declare a variable for username, and let's declare another variable for password. Let's assign username. Now, don't do this at home, but imagine our password generation technique was to replace all occurrences of the letter O with a $sign. We could do this by using the replace function. The replace function works by asking you what's the text that you want to use as your starting text. So in our case, it's username. What's the text you want to find in that starting text? So I want to find all occurrences of the letter O. Then what you want to replace it with. And I want to replace it with a $sign. Let's display that password back to the user in a message box. And I'll title my message box "Very Bad Password." Let's run that code and see what it looks like. So as you can see, our replace function has replaced all occurrences of the letter O with a $sign. So the replace function works by taking a starting point, the characters you want to replace, and what you want to replace them with. Let's comment this out and look at another example. Let's copy this long text that we had before and reuse it here. Let's say we wanted to replace some words in this long text, such as medical. Let's declare a variable to hold as our source and another to hold as our output. If you remember, our source would be equal to, we take the first line of the long text, we then say source is equal to whatever source currently is, and we concatenate on the second sentence. And then we say source is equal to whatever the source currently is, and we concatenate on the last sentence. Let's display what we have so far in the message box. Now we can replace all occurrences of the word medical with the word scientific. Let's do that. Output will be equal to, we use our replace function, put in the text we want to use as our start, text we want to replace, and what we want to replace it with. We can then display the output in a message box. Let's run that code and see what it looks like. So the first time, before the replace, we have the text says the medical field is filled with cryptic jargon, including innumerable scientific and medical terms and abbreviations. Now, the word medical has been replaced with scientific. The scientific field is filled with cryptic jargon, including innumerable scientific terms and scientific abbreviations. So the replace function is really handy for searching through existing text and replacing words or letters with different words or letters. Next, let's take a look at the lowercase function. Now, as the name implies, the lowercase is used to convert text to all lowercase. So let's declare a variable for username. Declare that as a string. Let's say our user has entered a username. It could come from an input box, or it could come from a file that you've imported. Now, as you can see, our username contains capital letters. But what if we have a rule that says all usernames must be lowercase? Let's display a message to our user, letting him know usernames must be all lowercase. And let's show them what they provided. Let's run that code and see what that looks like. So their usernames must be all lowercase, and we've highlighted what they've entered. So how do we convert what they've provided into all lowercase? Let's declare a variable for lowercase usernames. The way we convert from whatever case is provided to lowercase is to use the lowercase function and pass in whatever is entered that we want to convert to lowercase. With that, we can display that back to the user. Nice username, and concatenate the username. Lower username. Okay, let's run that and see what that looks like now. So first, it's not all lowercase. We use the lcase function to convert it, and then it's all lowercase. Next, let's take a look at the uppercase function. The uppercase function does the opposite of the lowercase function. Let's copy our variables from the lowercase sub into the uppercase and change the variable name as we need it. Again, let's say our user is used to a situation where the username is all lowercase and they provided it in this instance, but they're logging onto a different system. So we say in this system, usernames must be all uppercase. Let's run that and see what that looks like. So in this system, usernames must be all uppercase. In this case, the users enter the lowercase username. So let's see how we convert that. We use the uppercase function, and we pass in whatever entry the user has made. Now let's display that back to the user. So nice username, and we displayed the username that was entered. Let's run that again. So in this system, usernames must be all uppercase, and you've provided lowercase, and a nice username, all in uppercase. Finally, let's take a look at the proper case function. We can use the proper case function to convert a sentence so that every word starts with a capital letter. Let's declare a variable for patient name. Declare that as a string. Let's declare another variable for proper patient name. Also as a string. Let's assign the patient name. And let's display that patient name in the message box. Let's run that and see what that looks like. So fine, it's all lowercase. Now let's see if we can convert this to proper case. The way to do that is to use the Excel function string convert. String convert, and then you pass in what you want to convert, and then you say how you want to convert it. In my case, I want to convert it to a proper case. Let's display that to the user. Let's run that again. First time, it's all lowercase, and the second time, Excel has converted it to proper case. And so for the proper case, we use the Excel function string convert, pass in what we want to convert, and we use VB proper case to tell Excel we want to convert this to a proper case. So we have covered all of the regularly used, the more commonly used string manipulation functions in Excel. Using these either individually or in combination, you can convert almost any of the complex text we use in the clinical setting to be able to use in your program. Okay, hope you found that useful and interesting, and I will see you in the next video.